Okay, we are live. You can go ahead, T.
Okay. So I don't even know what to do. Do I just go to your page?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She's sharing it to her page, y'all. 1 second.
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure. It's like every time I want to do something on the internet, it just doesn't work.
That we made.
It's something as simple as I'm just trying to share. It's just.
Are you on my page?
I'm about to go to it right now.
Yep, we live on here.
Okay.
Okay, y'all give me a second. We letting T share it to her accounts.
Yeah. I'm like an old person. All right.
You a Detroit elder at the jazz concerts?
Detroit elder, yes. All right, I think we live on my page too.
Okay. Peace, everybody, and what up, though? This is Crown of MECCAcon, Midwest Ethnic Convention for Comics and Arts. Today, we are privileged and honored to have my sister, Natasha T Miller. She is a spoken word artist. She's a performer. She's an activist. She's a business owner. She's a lot of things. So I'm going to let her briefly introduce herself and let everybody know who you are.
Yeah, so I am Natasha T Miller. I am a Detroit native, born and raised here, and still live here. I perform poetry around the world, different universities, corporate gigs, venues, etc. I'm a community engagement manager for Science Gallery Detroit, which is a science and art museum that's new here to the Americas and a Michigan State University partnership. The spokesperson for Shinola Detroit, and I mean, a poet at my core. I think that's probably the thing that's most important that kind of brings all of these other things together. So yeah, I perform, I open up at concerts, I do commercials, I do whatever people pretty much ask me to do with poetry.
So what got you into poetry? Not like what made you start writing, but what got you into the business aspect of poetry? Because you're very much about your business like I am. So what got you into the business aspect of poetry and spoken word and slamming and all that?
Yeah, I think it was a mix of things. I think number one is that is something that since day one, once I realized that you could get a check off of being like a poet or a performing artist, to be honest, it was business from here on out. So
okay.
I did a show in my first show on the road, which was with my sister Alicia Bad Mama Jama and Dana, Lord rest her soul. They actually like took the train with us over to Toronto. And my manager at the time gave us like $60 after doing the show, right? And I just opened up the little envelope and was like, oh, it's like money in here, right? $60, and then Canadian money, that's probably like $4 when I bring it back here, right? Which now it might be a little different, but I was like, oh, you can get paid.
The fact that you got anything, period,
period, right? So from there on out, I was like, oh, people pay you to do this, and it became a business from there on out, right? Like it was like, oh, you know what? If people are willing to pay you, then you need to move in a professional manner. You need to act like a professional. So then I started to become, more professional, start to make sure that, I was where I needed to be when I needed to be there, that I was showing up in a way that people were booking me to show up in. But I think that was a very simple answer. I'm pretty disciplined from coming from a military background. And I kind of took that discipline, worked it into just like into the business aspect. And I think that if I wasn't doing poetry, I have two passions. One is like I would probably be a chef, and the other one is I would be in business or economics in some sort of way. So I'm all about artists being paid. I'm all about artists, being paid what they're worth, and I'm all about kind of watching my book. So I think that's a simple answer. I knew they would pay for it, and I was like, well, let's get paid for it.
Where was your first feature ever?
Oh, my first feature ever was at this place called Hoop City Grill.
Yes.
Now, you remember Hoop City Grill?
Of course.
Inside of Southfield, right?
I try to pretend I was hood back in the day.
Okay, all right, yeah. So, which is crazy because growing up, it was the Southfield AMC. That was the movie theater out there.
Right.
I never really went there. Like it was the hood theater to me, right? So I would always go all of these other places because I wasn't like as hood as I wanted to be growing up,
exactly.
Right? But Hoop City Grill opened up, and I remember I was dating this person at the time, and this was when I first
person,
right? And I was like, So we're dating Megan. So during this date, she works at Hoop City Grill, and she's like, my boss Jamal is starting an open mic every Sunday. And I wrote my first poem, and she was like, I think that you should come to the open mic. And I was like, all right. And I still remember, like, I would go to this open mic. I still have my ponytail, which is what I was known for, like the first 10 years of doing poetry. So I go, that's actually, like, I feel like the first place I had my first legal drink at. I probably had my first drink like in the back of somebody's van at like 12. But my first legal drink, I think I turned 21 at Hoop City Grill. And I remember this. I used to sit on a stool. I would never like stand up and perform because I was nervous. But I remember sitting there reading this poem off paper called Black versus Black, and that was my first place. And I miss it. If Hoop City Grill was revived, I'd go there and do a feature.
Yeah, it was so many people from our poetry community that started at Hoop City Grill, you know, and grew friendships and bonds to that place. It was, you know, it was a few places in Detroit that were like that as far as the open mic community. So did you like doing features, or did you want to start, start branching away from features, and that's how you got into slamming? How did you get into slamming?
I think that my slam story was it was very basic, right? Like, I didn't really know too much about slam poetry. And I can't remember who I was in the car with at the time, but there was a poetry slam happening, I believe, in Grand Rapids. And I had been doing Hoop City Grill for a while. And by featured, I use that kind of loosely. I would go there every Sunday. We would kind of be the featured artist because we were there every Sunday, right? So instead of us getting to do one poem, we would get to go last and do like 2 poems. So that kind of seemed like a feature to me.
Like light shineth, rest well, brother.
Rest the soul, right? Like, it was kind of like that sort of thing. Like, oh, I'm last, I get to do 2. So it's a feature. So I remember just being in the car one day and somebody being like, you should do this poetry slam that's in Grand Rapids. It's like $250. And I was like, I've never done a poetry slam before. What is a poetry slam? And it was like, oh, you could call my friend Omari King Wise. And I hadn't really met Omari, but I think he had like seen me at poetry shows. And I was like, okay, we'll call him. And he just kind of broke down like what poetry slam was over the phone, and probably like a 15-20 minute conversation. And I was like, all right, well, let's do it. Let's go up there. And we went up there, and I kind of ran across these who were big wigs at the time, or at least to me. I remember it's Future. I remember Future. You know, he was there. A couple other big cats, right, who have been doing poetry for a long time. And in the first round, like, I thought I killed it, right? And the audience as well thought that I killed it. And I took it to the second round. And I remember everybody like coming up to me afterwards, like, you really deserve that. You really deserve that, right? So I started to think like, oh, I really deserve that shit, right? Like, I should have won that poetry slam. But then I started to get more into poetry slam, and I realized that that's just how poetry slam is, right? Like, it depends on the night, it depends on the judges, it depends on the vibe. So nothing was really exactly. So nothing was owed to me. But from there, I was like, all right, let me learn what this shit is for real. Right. And I kind of like, you know, downloaded and processed what it was I needed to do. And then I started to just get more and more into poetry slam, kind of bringing me into the Women of the World Poetry Slam, which is probably one of my most memorable performances. And from there, I think that my career just kind of did this. And that's when I started to have real features. Like, you come out, this is your set, you perform for 20, 30 minutes.
What time you going up?
Exactly.
Here's the bucket, so you can get more money than what we already need.
Exactly. So it became like my show, and all of that started from Poetry Slam. But really, I wasn't like studying it. I wasn't watching it. I didn't know who the big wigs were. So you got to think that I'm just kind of going through this blindly, right? Like, I'm just kind of jumping in, and that's kind of the best way to do things sometimes. Like, I have no expectations. I'm really not even here to win the money. I just want to be involved in it, and I get involved in it, and become this what people thought was a phenomenon in Poetry Slam. And like I said, it took me somewhere else.
And let's talk about Women of the World, because Women of the World is shit. Let's talk about Women of the World. Let everybody know what Women of the World slam is. Yeah, so basically, we're heavy involvement and heavy wins with Women of the World.
So they call it WOWPS, Women of the World Poetry Slam. And I think it was created as a way to carve out space for women in poetry slam, because something that we noticed is that even when women went to the individual world poetry slam, that the favor was always leaning towards men. So we felt like there was a space where women, their voices needed to be isolated without the noise, that women needed to be celebrated, and that we just needed to create this whole different environment that was less toxic than what you would find at typical poetry slams. So the first one was actually started here in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of chaired by Cassie Poe and Phoenix more at the time.
Shout out to Phoenix.
Shout out to Phoenix, who's always
Cassie.
Yeah, and Cassie, right? So, so for me, again, this is a poetry slam that I've been on 4 out of the 5 Women of the World poetry slams that I've competed in. I've always made it to the final stage, which is the top 12, and about 3 of those times I was ranked like number 3 female poet in the world. So it basically determines who are the best women poets in the world. And the glory in getting the title is that if I go to a university and say, hey, I want to perform for your university, I want you to pay me $3,000, and I'm just a good poet in my city, they don't know me, so they don't have a reason to be like, oh, this poet in your city, here goes this check, come do a show, right? But if I say, oh, I'm the number 3 female slam poet in the world, then there's this validation. It's a general consensus that people like you when they think that you're somebody. And also, once these people see you, they start to book you and bring you to their shows around the world because it's full of poets, right? The show itself. So I had a bittersweet time in poetry, right? I remember my first year being here at the Women of the World Poetry Slam, and this is how it happens. I show up to the last chance poetry slam, right? The last chance poetry slam is, and this is funny because I just had a conversation earlier with the marketing person for my book, for Button, and he talked about how I met you at the last chance slam, right? So I'm doing the last chance slam, and that's pretty much your last chance to get into the official Women of the World Poetry Slam. So I show up after work or something, and I have to win 3 rounds to get in, right? And it's 12 other poets there from around the world. We're in Detroit. We're at 1515 Broadway. I won this round, right?
And I was at that show too.
Oh, shout out to 1515 hard. Chris is crazy. That's my man. So which also sparked a whole ton of other things in my career at 1515. So I win the
about you.
Yeah. So I win the last chance slam, and then I get into the poetry slam. I pretty much over the week win like every single round that I am in. And then I go to final stage, which is the top 12 poets. And this is out of like 76 poets. And then I have like 2 or 3 tie-breaking rounds with 2 other poets, which is a poet named Deep out in Houston, and Andrea Gibson, who is just like the lesbian poetry god, right? This is a person who had been doing poetry for maybe 12 years before I even looked at a mic, right? So I have no idea what's happening. But again, I'm blind in it. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm fucking shit up. And then I get there and it's just like, oh, wait a minute, that's not what's happening at all here. Like I'm up against the wall, but it's fun. So I tie and I come out as the number 3 female slam poet in the world. But then I go home and I hear all of this talk about how the poets in Detroit, some of the women poets who were there at the poetry slam, thought that I didn't deserve the win, thought that I didn't deserve to be in the position that I was in, thought that I was just like a fluke. And it kind of hurt my feelings because I was like, all of these other poets from around the world, it's like you do all of these things in the world and you want validation from your parents, right? And they're the only people that won't give it to you. And it feels like none of that matters. So
don't encourage me to start talking shit.
But again, so it was that moment. But I took that and I was like, right? I knew I was young in it. I knew I was still getting started. I knew I had room to grow. I knew there were things that I didn't have right, but I was young. So I was like, oh, that's how they feel. So I'm just like a one-timer. I'm just like a fluke. So I'm like, all right. And from there, it was like, bam, there goes the Sprite commercial. All right, bam, there goes year 2 of the Women Report. Like, all right. And I just was like, I don't even have time for it. And then that whole narrative changed where it was just like, oh, look at T Miller. Maybe she did deserve that. So it wasn't even that I used the hate as fuel. Like I said, it really did kind of hurt my feelings because it was like, I got to be here all the time. I got to be performing in front of y'all all the time. And even if I was young, I felt like what you do is you say, you know what? Let me help you. Let me tell you what it is so we can make you the phenomenon that they think you are. But instead it was like, oh no, they were all talking shit about you. And I was like, me? Like, come on, then, But life changed after that. So I have no regrets.
And you shouldn't have any regrets for being the shit. You know what I'm saying?
When you win, you think I'm sorry that I won? Like, I'm like,
yeah, like
cool. You know, like it hurt my feelings, but I mean, the check still cashed the same way. When I was showed up to the bank the next day, I was like, "Does this check work?" Because they was talking shit about me. And they was like, "Nope, that ain't affected at all." I was like, "All right, then we good."
And I'm sure those same people are the same people who started begging you to do features for $50 at their open mics.
All day. But you know, my God is a forgiving God. So, so I just said, all right, Lord, I'm following your footsteps and take the 50.
Yeah, speaking of Detroit artists, before I even talk about artists in Detroit, who are your favorite Detroit poets? Name 4.
4 of my favorite Detroit poets. Man, I would absolutely say, and there's different poets for different reasons, right?
Right.
For legend, for consistency, for the way that she was able to take Detroit and make the poetry scene something very global. I would be remiss if I didn't absolutely say like Jessica Kirmore off top, right? That's not a performance thing. That's not a writing thing. That's not
a business thing. That's a bad.
And I'm a business person, and I found out early that you kind of look at people who you want to follow in their footsteps, and then you take their path, and then you make it your own. And so when it comes to business, it's pretty much unmatched, right? And that doesn't
business is fuck.
Right, and that's not me saying that it's not writing. That's just me saying business. Right. Somebody who has been in the game as long as she's been, who's been fearless, who's been consistent, who's been, and then when I asked Jessica to do things, and she was asking me to do things early on, she said yes. I just had a poetry slam a few weeks ago, and my boss was like, can we get Jessica? And I just was like, oh, let me call her. And then I ended up hitting her up. And I haven't texted her in like years, maybe. Like, is this your number? Sorry, can you do the show? She did it. So I think Jessica absolutely has to be up there, right? I think I would say Blair. I think that rest his soul, Blair was absolutely one of my favorite writers. Just had the way to tell other people's stories and make them his own. I think one of my favorite poems from him. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like my favorite. His Simpsons poem, favorite. Like love it. Long past his passing, I would still show that poem in like classes that I was teaching. So and he was queer, and he was Black, and he was out, and he was kind. And I think that is something that that kindness is something that is kind of unmatched, that I've probably not met in almost any other human, let alone poet in Detroit. So Blair for sure. Eric D. Matthews was like
the demigod.
I mean, unfuckwittable, right? Like from one, right? Still, like just like you can't even. And I mean, so intelligent and just fucking like brilliant and smart and articulate, and also so
gangster voice,
and gangster. And like gangster as hell at the same time. It's like, wait, like these are your kids. This is your house. This is your, but very fucking real and authentic. So I cannot. One of my favorites, like she has poems that I'm just like, damn, I wish I could think like that. I wish I could write that. And then I mean, I love a lot of poets, and I think that it's so many I could put out there. But if I'm gonna go younger generation, and I'm just going to that because I've given so many of like the greats who are a little bit older than I am, but not by much. But if I had to bring it down some, probably in my cohort of poets, I love Miles. I love Phelps. He's my brother. He don't do much poetry. He's a hip hop head. But one thing about him is
when he does poetry, he does this
shit. He writes his ass off, and he's a person who can write a poem in about.
He does that shit when he does it.
When he does it, right? I can call him and be like, I know you don't do poetry, but I need you to do a show. In about 2 days, he writes a poem, and it's really good. And I've always said to him, even these past few years, I think you should get back into poetry. I think that was the stepping stone to the career that you've chosen as hip hop, and I think that you would have a very successful career in it. But he'll pick it up when he wants to. But he's fire to me. I started off with him. And those first features in Toronto were with him, right? So
there was the other all the time tags and pieces.
Yeah. So I would say if that's just four I have to go off top with, that would be it. But again, it's no shade to nobody. A lot of poets around the city that I absolutely love to hear. But I think that a lot of those poets, much like Miles, have taken different turns and different different directions in their careers. So
and I wish him the best with the hip hop also, because he cold with that as well. Sorry, I'm being hood and lighting the candle, my bad. So let's talk about Artist In, because I'm a huge fan of Artist In.
Okay. So Artist In is something that, again, I was traveling around the world, and I remember a few times that I would go out to spaces that, one, I wouldn't know where I was spending the night at, right? Because as a new poet or a new artist, when you first getting out there on the road, you're just trying to make it. You might go to New York and get $50 for a show, but it costs you $400 to get out there, right? You might go to Boston and get $30 for a show, and it depends on merch, but it costs you $300 to get, right? So then you would be staying with people, right? Sometimes you never met these people. It's just friends of friends or poets suggestions, right? So some spaces I would go to and I would be like, oh my God, this shit is like terrible, right? For whatever reason, like the house is dirty. It's like, I remember going to like somebody's house and I'm grateful that this person, took me in, but like I get to the house and go to the bathroom and it's like cat shit all over the floor. And I'm just like, oh man, I can't even like shower before my shoulder are out, right? I just got to sleep with all of my clothes on. And so, you have situations like that. And then you have situations where you don't know the person. So do you feel safe or do you not feel safe, or, whatever is happening in your own space, in your own world. And then I had situations where I would go and do college shows and I would notice that I would just come in for a day. I would go to a hotel and then I would leave immediately. I would do the show. Next morning, I was on a flight. I was back home. I was going wherever I was going. So I never really got to enjoy the city, or I feel like contribute to the environment in which I was in, outside of just this small window that I existed in. So with all of that, I just kind of came home and was like, well, what can I create that gives poets or performers, new performers, one, a safe and a clean place to stay. Second thing would be give them a stay long enough where they can contribute to the economy of whatever space that they're in, and they can go out and they can see the city and they can leave a little piece of themselves. And three, again, they just have their own space, their own environment to create more if they needed to. So that's where the idea of the Artist In came from. And it's taken on a few different lives over like a few years, because as with any organization, as with any business, like, shit is hard. So we had one house that we were fixing up, and then it was like, oh, we're up against a lot. It's going to take $1 million to fix this home. We can't do it. And then we had some partners come in, and I was doing one in Boston, Edison, which is around the corner from the house that I live in. And I was working with somebody, and we would do like a lot of shows there. When people come in, they do shows. And, then like maybe some artists would come in from Ohio doing a poetry slam and be like, we don't have nowhere to stay. And then, okay, cool, come here, stay here. But it wasn't my space solely. So what I did was I bought my own house, as you've been inside of.
Beautiful house.
Yeah, which is in Virginia Park. And yeah, I do things like the art on my wall is behind me is, from Ajana from Detroit, the Black artist. The art over here is from Rudy Francisco. So what I did was I started to, one, do shows in my living room, pre-pandemic. I bring artists in. I move my living and dining room around. We've had like 100, 150 people in this space just watching poetry shows. Then, people can book the space. People could say like, hey, I need to come over just to, a few days ago, had my friend come in here and shoot the last little section of her rap video, in the kitchen as you came over, and we did the photography with. So, it's a space where people come and they say, I need to do a thing. And I'm usually like, okay, well, do you have a budget, or what is the budget, or how can I help? So it's really just an idea. And the idea is just, how do you promote the emotional and mental wellness of artists by making them feel safe, by making them feel, like they're in an environment in which they can contribute to. And how do you just give back? And that's really, what it was. And Artist In doesn't have to stop here. I'm pretty sure that people do this around the world all the time in their personal spaces, and they can take on the name and take on that logic.
Yeah, and branch it off to like Artists In New York, Artists In LA.
And that was always the goal. Like start it there.
and I had a few filmmakers. I had filmmakers.
Yeah, you got your filmmakers in. I forgot.
Yeah, two of our billion filmmakers we had last year. They enjoyed your space a lot.
Came in, it was just theirs. You know, we leave you alone. You got everything you need here. You know, we make sure it's clean and hospitable, and that's
beautiful house.
That's the goal. You know, I feel like that people around the world, outside of the things that I've dealt with, you know, people around the world, that's why people around the world have given so much to me in art that for me, it was like, well, there has to be space for me to give back to other people. And that's something that I've always wanted to practice and wanted to do. So the artisan was just kind of like a drop in the bucket to this sea of things that I want to do to make sure that I can give back to people.
Do you all have it registered on Airbnb?
Mm-hmm. That's on Airbnb. Yep.
That's what's up.
I usually tell my friends just like you. Like, I don't make my friends go through Airbnb. I tell my friends to just them your people, how your people see my people, and then we kind of
that. Yeah. Because I think that's great that we have even, you know, Black owned rooms for rent for travel in the city, because we definitely need, you know, a lot more of those.
Oh, and yeah, of course.
I hope to see it branch farther, even in the city of Detroit, you know, to have multiple properties that other people can have, and then do it through your company.
Yep.
And that would be, you know, that would be wonderful to do.
Yeah, team up, link up. Something we all do together.
So you are a part of Shinola. You are well, I'll let you tell them exactly what you do.
Yeah, I do a lot. Shinola is like it has been like home base to me and for me for a very long time. And I appreciate every opportunity. And one thing about Shinola is I've always been very honest. I understand, and we understand the criticisms, right, that comes from you know, Shinola being a new business in the city. And I've never kind of backed down from that, which is why I'm inside of the company. So I can say, hey, these are the things that we are getting wrong. And these are the things that we need to change, right? And I feel like with me being at the table, my voice has, I've always been heard, right? And I've always tried to carve out space in Shinola where other people feel heard. So my journey with Shinola just kind of started as me writing a poem. And again, this came from 1515 Broadway. Somebody suggested me to this new company to be a part of this campaign. I wrote a poem in like 2 minutes before my shoot. That poem ended up at some point being on CNN during like the election, all types of crazy stuff, right? Then I went into retail for Shinola, and I went from being a #1 seller, which had never done retail before, to Shinola kind of saying, hey, the owner, you know, I want you to be the spokesperson of the brand. And then I went up to corporate. And in corporate, I was working between training and marketing. So, you know, I was creating a lot of the training tools. I was doing a lot of like, hey, you want me to do a performance? I come out, I do a performance. And in there, I found family, right? You know, like, you know, a lot of people know that I typically go to Hawaii like 2-3 times a year. And 2 or one of those times, mostly is at the owner of Shinola's house on Maui, right? And these are people who will come to me and say like, oh, you know, I lost my brother, I'll have my nephew. You know, you think about the president of the company coming and saying, you know, hey, T Miller, if you ever need somebody to watch your nephew, like I'm the president of the company, like I'll bring your nephew around my sons. I'll watch your nephew. So I've always kind of been, even when I moved towards community engagement with Science Gallery in Michigan State, I've always been loyal to Shinola, and they've always been pretty, you know, loyal to me, and not in a cult sense. I mean, just at a moment when I really needed something, and we all need something, they were there to provide that something for me, which was support. And they've done it over the years, and I've managed to be able to do that with them as well. So at the moment, I work as still like a, you know, spokesperson and also a cultural ambassador. So I do a lot of the diversity and inclusion initiatives with the training team. And then I just had the opportunity to interview Anthony Mackie, Captain America, on behalf of Shinola. That turned into like a 25-minute conversation. So I do performances for him. So I'm pretty much just in that bag. And it's been 5 years that they've kind of been attached to me. And I've been attached to them, but they've also done the thing that I think that you do when you love somebody, which is Shinola said, if we need to set her free to go and learn, to go and be and do more. And even when I was there, they would let me go and do poetry shows and give me approval and it wasn't like special treatment. It was just like, this is the thing that makes you special. This is why we need you on our team. This is why we want you here. So we're never going to stifle what you're doing outside in the world, because we know that you always represent us well. But again, I'm from Detroit, and I say that because I have to always let people know, like, I'm not on the inside sitting at the table and I'm oblivious to what the criticisms are, but I'm also being honest about the fact that they're not on the inside oblivious to what the criticisms are as well. This is something that we work on. This is something that we train for. This is something that if you're sitting at the table, you know, you got to make sure that you're telling them like what the people on the outside want to eat or what it is that you even want to eat and digest. So I've been fortunate in that position. It's been 5 years, but my full-time job is with Michigan State and Science Gallery.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about, because as far as Michigan State, it's nice that you're doing it through an artist activist aspect of, you know, your employment and your partnership. Not even employment, but I would even say more of a partnership, even if it is employment.
Yeah, I mean, but that's pretty much like, I think like everything I do feels two-sided. Every job that I have, and I am a firm believer in, if you got to work a 9 to 5, work a 9 to 5. You know, there's a point where I just did poetry, and I could have probably did that for the rest of my life if I wanted to. But I like benefits. I like 401ks, and I like, you know, consistent checks, and I like, you know, savings. I like things like that, right? And I also like working. So that's something that I made the choice to do. So Michigan State, I'm officially employed by Michigan State, right?
Right.
Which is a dream to me, because I didn't graduate from a university. College was not my route at all. So to even end up at the table and to be in that position was automatically like something I was like, wow, like mind blowing. But I work for Science Gallery, which is a science and art museum that is in partnership with Michigan State. Because
a very big deal, y'all.
Pretty much each science gallery is partnered with one of the biggest universities in their area. Mm-hmm. And Science Gallery actually started in Dublin, and it exists in Australia, in Rotterdam, in Bengaluru, a few other places. And we opened up the first one here in North America with a very small team like 3 years ago. And I do community engagement, and community engagement there is me being able to obviously create partnerships and bring networks and bring people together. And that's not far off from what I do in my life anyway, right? That's what I was doing in Shinola. That's what I do in poetry, like bring people to this one space. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that with Science Gallery now on behalf of Michigan State, you know, bring programs like the Science of Grief, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then I use that partnership to say, hey, we need to do something at like the Shinola Hotel, or we need like to use a room or get a discount on a notebook, or, you know, something to that effect. So again, it's kind of like the work just all intersects, and the work is all true to just like, you know, who I feel like I've always wanted to be, which is a person who uses her network to kind of create some sort of larger or global or, you know, impact, just create things on a larger scale.
Yeah, I was telling a lot of my friends in the comic community and the Afrofuturist community to look up and reach out to Science Lab.
Oh yeah, Science Gallery Detroit. It's amazing. We do
Yeah, I was telling them about it, and they were like super impressed by that. So yeah, I definitely appreciate the presence of Science Gallery in Detroit, especially.
Oh yeah, our exhibitions are fire, and I don't say it because I work there. I say it because they are it's open, it's all free to the public. You know, the programming that we do a lot of grief programming, you know, and we're the collider for art and science, and we make science accessible to community or to a community that it typically isn't accessible to, right? So we want to make sure that the kids in the inner city, that the kids in Detroit, that my cousins, that my aunties who typically don't understand something like what neuroscience does and how it affects the brain and how grief is affected by neuroscience, like those types of conversations we bring from this level, and we kind of bring them down and say, hey, let me talk to you, because you're the people that these conversations affect. So it's a dream too. It's amazing. I've been here for 3 years, and I'm loving every bit of it, and they pay me well, so so I have no complaints.
Yeah, my son is a senior at Michigan State.
Oh, man, I know.
His major is neuroscience. And
man,
he most definitely knows about the program.
Oh, man, I would have been out of business. I know that, like, I see it all the time, but it's like putting two and two together until you told me the other day. I was like, I'd have swooped him up so hard like a year ago. But tell him we coming for him in one way or another.
Yeah, good. Yeah, his whole squad, they all are pre-med and getting ready to go to med school or bi-year. Like, they all are very focused, and I'm just proud of all of them. And Michigan State is definitely an outstanding school. So I'm happy that if he's decided to stay here, he decided to go there.
Yeah, I love it. And that's one of I run a youth advisory board for Science Gallery. And one of the things that I said is my mission while I'm there is that we create this pipeline from Detroit to Michigan State, because it is an amazing school, and its presence been in the city for like 150 years, and our students don't even know how accessible it is to them. And again, I'm a firm believer in go to college, don't go to college. We're going to provide you with all of the options, but you need to know that this is an option, and we need to create a very clear pathway on it. Doesn't seem so intimidating. How do you go from I am this kid that goes to the high school on the east side of Detroit and I see myself as a neuroscientist or studying neuroscience at Michigan State? What is the pathway? So Science Gallery job is to act as that censor that gets you from here to there, if that's what you choose.
What do you all do work with different high schools, local high schools?
Yeah, we do work with pretty much. So I do a lot of work, first of all, with Inside Out. That they've been one of my best. Always. You know? So we work with all of their students, a lot of their students throughout the year. I do things like a year ago, I did a program with the high school Southwest Detroit, over in Southwest Detroit, where I actually got buses and took them from Southwest Detroit up to Michigan State to the Broad Museum, which was like some of their first times at a museum and sometimes in their first time at the Broad. And then I brought in like Rudy Francisco, Jennifer Harge, Amari Simone, Shatori Shakur, like artists to come and teach them how to tell their own stories, whether it be poetry or dance or singing or whatever that was. So so as much as we can, and we're building out programs right now that's part of our like 5-year plan, where we'll actually more than likely have like our own Science Gallery after school program inside of high schools.
Yeah, they definitely need that at DSA.
Sure. We work, trust me, we are working on it. Everything I can work on with trying to get the youth involved, I'm working on it.
Yeah, they do a lot of stuff with Knight Foundation and U of M though. It's programming, you know what I mean? And that would definitely be an outstanding program. Yeah. Of all schools, Detroit School of Arts, because they need all different branches of art.
Yep, absolutely. And we working on it. That's our thing. We partner with these schools. We partner with U of M. Like we ain't here to take it all. We here to just work with everybody else.
Let's talk about the Science of Grief. Science of Grief you do it annually, correct?
Yes, I do.
24 hours. I'll let you talk about it.
So the Science of Grief, basically, again, everything just kind of starts as a seed, as an idea, and a lot of my programs come from a personal space. So, I lost my brother here in 2013. And that was a very difficult time for me. And I only knew how to call it sadness. This is a world before I knew what grief even meant or what it was, how to put a title to it. So I kind of just felt like over like 3 years, I would always talk to my friends or my family about like missing my brother or what sadness I felt. And one night I just got to a space where I was like, I'm just tired of talking to the same people, right? Because I felt like even though they probably didn't, that it was exhausting, right? I was like, if I'm feeling like this at 4:00 in the morning, 3 years later, how many people in the world are feeling kind of these same feelings that I'm feeling, right? And then I woke up and was like, oh man, what if I created a program that's like 24 hours where people could just come all times of the day, all times of the night, and just get on stage and just be like, yo, I'm dealing with some shit over some shit that's happened to me, right? And I was like, I wonder what space I could use. And I was like, well, maybe the Detroit Institute of Arts, which is a big act. Right at the time, go big or go home. Right at the time, my friend Taylor Aldridge, shout out to Taylor. This is her birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Okay, I actually feel blessed. She actually texted me a couple days ago saying we need to catch up this weekend. So I'm on your ass, Taylor. But it's her birthday. She's a Black arts critic out in LA right now, and she pretty much was like, well, this seems like a community performance on grief. And I was like, oh shit, like I didn't think about it like that. So she kind of pitched it to the DIA for me. And they were like, let's talk. And in year one, we talked and we narrowed it down to, let's not be 24 hours. We're crazy. Let's do 14 hours, which is still crazy, right? So we narrowed it down to 14 hours. And then instead of it being like loosely grief, we tailored it to like 7 different forms of grief, like suicide, terminal illness, queer grief, trans grief, Detroit grief, Black grief. And then we had this idea to bring grief therapists and counselors, you know, like where do Black women go to grieve, and clergies and people from around the city who actually had the resources that would help people take the grief that they were talking about and manage it past science of grief. Like, this can't be a one-time thing where you just come and you talk about it, but we don't give you any resources. So we created that space as well. And what we noticed, though, is that people just wanted to be in community with other people who were grieving the same way that they were grieving. And we had people who would stay for 14 hours, right? So we did it 3 years in a row. This year, we made it digital, and we partnered with Emory in Atlanta, which is our second science gallery that came online.
I didn't even hear this completely science.
Shit.
Universities ever.
Yeah, and then we partnered with Trinity or Dublin Science Gallery International out in Dublin, and we did an online program. And like, one special thing that we did is, like, speaking of neurosciences, last year we actually brought out Dr. Yewande Pierce, who was a neuroscientist out in California, to really talk about and explain how grief physically affects people, that you're not imagining the physical effects of how you feel when you feel sadness and when you feel loss and when you feel grief. So that's how we were incorporating the science. We're actually gearing up for an important program right now, which is called Grief in a Time of Joy. So on December 4th, we have an online program where I figured this year more than ever, you'll have so many people grieving the loss of their loved ones for the very first time. And, you know, due to the pandemic. And also grief during the holidays is fucking, it's hurtful. It's sad. And then people are already dealing with seasonal depression. So we're actually working with some doctors, some psychologists, and some researchers, and I'll be moderating the panel on December 3rd, and it's open to everybody. But we wanted to make sure that our students at Michigan State felt supported during this time, and that's a spinoff of the Science of Grief. And then we're doing a whole podcast, 8-episode podcast about grief. So yeah. That's science.
That's what's up. That you're making the students at State the priority, the first and foremost, and then everybody else. You know, we welcome you too.
Right?
These babies have their space for creative grief.
Yeah, well, look how many moments they've lost, right? Like, you've lost like your last year of high school, your first year of college, your prom, your parents, you didn't just lose people. You lost all of these experiences that you will no longer be able to relive. So who are we to not acknowledge that pain, to not acknowledge that grief, to let them know early, life doesn't have to just go on. Things don't just move. We can stop for a minute and say, what is it that you are feeling? And there are other people who feel like this, and this is what we do to get through this together. So that is a priority, and that link is actually live, and I'll drop it somewhere like on your page. But it's open to anybody around the world.
Yeah, I appreciate that y'all got a segment on Detroit grief, because that shit is a real thing. People
this is all thing. But at Gallery Detroit, much like even Shinola Detroit, any business I kind of associate myself with, the center is Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit grief is some real, that's some. That's a whole segue to a whole nother interview.
That's a whole nother day, right?
All the time. Let's talk about your book coming out, Butcher with Button Poetry.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's still a very surreal thing to me to have a book coming out that is on, I would say a major publishing label. And I say that because my brother Rudy, sold like 300,000 copies of his book in just a few months on Button Poetry, right? So it's real. I fortunately, and it wasn't just knowing the founders of Button, because they make work for it like anywhere else, right? There was a point in time where they just wanted to do a book of stories with me. Like, they think I'm like a really good storyteller. So they were like, you'll be the first book of stories that we've ever published, right? And we'll start to promote it as now we're branching off and doing like stories. I was like, okay, cool. So I started to write the stories. But in the meantime, I just would, write poems. I put them up on Instagram. I was still performing, doing shows. And I also watch Food Network like all day, every day. Like, TV almost never leaves Food Network, right? When I would do shows at colleges, I would get off stage, I would go to my hotel, I would turn on Food Network, go to bed, wake up. That was it. So once I was sitting here, I had a dream about Food Network. And somebody had, I wanted to name my book Butcher, and somebody said, you can't do that because this Food Network star did that, right? And I was like, damn, okay. I woke up and I was taking a shower and I was like, wait, that was a damn dream. So then I kind of go like, yo, like I go and I look through all of my poems and I realize there's a common thread between food and grief. Over losing like my brother, and now I'm like, oh, maybe you've navigated this whole relationship with into grief with this relationship that you found with food. And I love cooking and I love like hosting, and that's what I do. So when I'm going through all of the poems, I'm realizing this common thread. So I go to Button, like, I think I got a book. And they're like, fuck yeah, you do. And I'm like, okay. So, still, and it took work. It took like a year and a half to even get here. I still had to write more poems and, go through the editing process and all of those different things. But then the pre-order link went, which is so surreal to see, went live on Halloween. And I didn't promote it to a few days later, right? To like this week. And I was on the phone with marketing today, and they were like, it's crazy that you put up one post. And it was like, we haven't really even done much, right? Then you put up one post, and then like I'm only up to like 6 books left. And they're like, only 100 books are pretty much gone in like 3 days off of you just kind of releasing this one post. So I'm excited. I'm planning to do like a restaurant, hopefully the world's back open, like a Zoom tour and a restaurant tour, and, really make this book that's something about, food, not just grief, but food, and the way the kitchen has always been important to Black people, people of color. So that's Butcher, and I'm excited. It's coming. It's here, February 23rd.
I'm a chef myself, and I'm obsessed with the cover. The cover is ridiculous. Can you tell everybody how the concept came about with you and your friend in the cover?
Yes, my friend, who is a dear friend of mine, Ebony Hogan, who lives in New York. I wrote a poem one time about I want to be something that comes before dessert. I can't remember the poem, right? It's just something about like the whole concept of the poem is that I want the person who I'm speaking to already be full of themselves, without thinking that I'm supposed to be the person to nourish them. It's just like, no, I want you to already be full. Like, I want to be dessert for once. I want you to have fun with me, right? That was the concept. And I just looked up one day online, and Ebony had created this sketch of just like a heart with all of these different like vegetables, like asparagus and things kind of growing next to the heart. And I was like, this is amazing. And I ended up putting it on, as I was editing the book, just kind of making it the cover. And then when I talked to the publisher, they were kind of like, do you want this to be your cover? Would you be open to seeing like other covers, or would you be open to us like kind of enhancing this or just seeing what it would look like? And I was like, yeah, of course, cool. And they sent it to their designer. And she came back with that, and the cover will change just a tad bit when the final comes out, which should be like next week. And then Ebony's sketch will actually be in the book, because that's where it came from. And obviously, I would never ever erase her or her work. And if it had been that cover, I would have been equally as happy and satisfied. But now I get the best of both worlds. I get that as a cover. I get her. So the cover now is like the heart with like all of these different kind of like plants growing, and it symbolizes that this is the heart, and this is the heart when it grows, and you're coming out of something and you're becoming something more, something better, or something else. So it's a very good looking cover. I love it. So, yeah, but the book itself, like I said, I'm excited about. I broke it down into like, if you dissected a cow, and shout out to my mentor, Mahogany Brown, who kind of helped me create that idea of just breaking down different parts of the cow, and chapter, who's also been insurmountable, in my life. So I broke it down like that, and now Butcher is a real thing, and I'm 6 books away from no more pre-order books.
Yeah, that's and you said that it officially launches in February.
February 23rd is the release date.
Yeah, so if y'all don't get those last 6, y'all gonna be basic. Gonna have to wait till February.
The wait for it, and all of these actually come like signed. So but
right, yeah. I forgot to say that.
Sign the books, they come to you. So Butcher. That's my most exciting thing is coming up. So I'm loving it.
Yeah, you being real humble, but I don't think people realize how big a deal your book actually is, let alone Button. because Button has some of the top poets in the world that are published on it.
I get to be on a label, like I said, with
kind of a big deal.
and Hanif and Olivia Gatwood and Rudy Francisco, and like I said, some people have sold hundreds of thousands of books, and I'm I hope that my community, but it's not even a hope, right? I hope they show up the same way, but I know they will, because they always have. Even with these last couple of days, people show up when they can and when they will. So I appreciate that. But I am joining a league of Avengers, and I'm happy to be on the squad. Like we all got our own superpower, and I'm just kind of fitting into it.
Avengers Assemble.
That's what we're gonna do.
Because Protega speaks to me directly, because I'm an activist, and Protega is something like the concept, even how you named it, is dope as shit off rip. So let's talk about Protega before we end this.
Man, so the Protega was really literally just me sitting on my couch, right? And I feel like over the years, we've all found a way to join these protests in different ways. Mostly, going to the protests and actually marching with people, right? That was the most thing, the thing that I did most. So I'm sitting on the couch, and again, I found this new relationship with like food and meeting people like basic needs. And I was like, I had to go downtown because I had to record something for Quicken Loans. I was doing a voiceover for Quicken Loans. So I had to go downtown, which was in the heart of where they were actually on Michigan and 3rd doing the protest at. So I was like, what if I went down there and just like fed people for a day, right? So I hit up my homeboy and was like, yo, like I'm gonna be down there tomorrow. What if we just go out after I record and just go like feed the protesters for a day? He like, all right, cool. So I go online. I'm like, all right, I'm telling people I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna raise some money. And then in like 13 minutes, I raised like $150. I was like, whoa, shit. Okay, I wasn't ready for that, right? But now I got to spend the money. So then I'm like, okay. And now I'm there. And then the donations are just like pouring in. So we get like all of this food from like Sam's Club and Walmart and Target. And then it just, from like day one, it just grows. People they're dropping money to us. Like you got Crystals shout out to Crystals from the Reed. Like, she sees that I need $280, that I spent $280. She matches $280. So now I'm back out there another day. Then my cousin, Naisha, shout out to her. She's like, oh,
Naisha.
Crystal's match $280. I'm gonna match $280. So now I got like $600. I was like, oh God, I really got to go back out there, right? So this turned into like a 46-day project, and then people were down there just like, we were giving out like tampons and aspirin and masks and hand sanitizers. And shout out to Detroit Bus for giving us the hand sanitizers. And we're giving out pizza and tacos. So then we were finding ways to support people like Black-owned businesses like Greg's. Then going to Southwest in the taco truck. So we giving out like fresh hot food. We got vegan options from Pie Side. Like we're giving out beef jerkies, all the good snacks too. Like not even just like the bottom shelf snacks. I mean, like
bodega, but it's the Protega.
So then I was like, we started to do news interviews. Like people, like the news were down there because of the protest, and they'd be like, "This is amazing. Like, what is this?" And one thing I've been really good at is like coming up with names. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck this is. And I was like, it's the Protega. And I was like, we're in this corner, and I was like, it's your protest friendly bodega. I was like, take what you need. Everything is free. And then we took that and we took it to the polls, as you know. So we sat out there at the polls on West Grand Boulevard. We fed people at the polls, and people were grateful. And now my best friend and I were doing, it was her idea, but the Protega is supporting it. Now we're going to feed up to 10 families for Thanksgiving.
And that's so dope.
We're going to cook it up, and then I'm going to get the Protega to support. So it just turned into this thing that was supposed to be like one day, a couple hours, because I was going to be in the area. And then I was like, oh shit, now people are giving us money. We're stuck in it. And we probably spent like $20,000 over like 46 days. And even with the polls, just kind of putting it back into giving people the things that they needed. And now it's a thing. So we'll be able to do the next one. Yeah.
Protesters need to eat. Protesters need to eat. Especially the die-hard protesters. Like,
for sure. So then we will be out there for 8 hours a day. Like they come and their stuff before they march, and they come back, and we still have stuff left out for them, like cold drinks. People got hangovers. We got Gatorades. Like I said, we got first aid kits. We got pretty much, and then we started to feed. We noticed that where we were at, we weren't just feeding protesters. Then homeless people would come by, like walking up and down the streets. And then people who were at work were like, I have no time. And we like, take whatever you need. And people are filling up their bags with it. So we're kind of pulling double and triple duty at the same time. So again, another situation where Detroit has given so much to me. whatever I can give back to them, I will continue to do that forever and always. And it feels good. It's work that I actually enjoy doing. And, I think the Protega will be here for a long time. And shout out to my friend Myron, who actually helps me a lot with it. And my Shinola family that comes out and help, and my Detroit family, because everybody kind of comes and take a shift when they can, and when they need to. So that is the Protega.
Yeah, have you picked the family yet? Because I saw you posted either yesterday or today. I saw it.
Well, we were
four, right? And people
we were picking one family, but then after immediately how it goes, things just blow up immediately, and we just decided that we will do up to 10 families. If people decide that they'll buy the groceries for the family that they want to nominate or get somebody to help, or depending on the money we get from like Protega donations, we'll do up to 10 families.
So are you all going to cook all the food for
both of them cook? Yes. She's a chef. She's a chef out in Atlanta, like amazing. And
let me know if y'all need help, because
we could always use a hand. We could always use a hand.
I would love to help y'all with that sincerely. I think that's absolutely dope.
Yeah, it's Chef.
Y'all are doing it.
CHEV on Instagram. It's her idea. I'm just her friend that's getting behind it, using the kitchen and putting the extra hand in and the word. But 10 families, I'm sure we're going to need all the help we can get.
What's her Instagram again? I overtalked you. I'm
sorry. Chef, it's okay. CHEF, Chef, CHEV. And if you follow me, Natasha T Miller on Instagram, I'm just gonna kind of plug her anyway. But it's Chef.
Yeah, that's very dope. Because it's nice to see people without huge corporations give back to the community and not be giving back to the community because they trying to get something else, so they need that attention.
We don't need it. We don't need the cameras. We don't need the lights. We don't need the corporations. Although, like I said, people in these corporations, my family in different areas, like Michigan State bosses, the associate provost, they send me money. Here goes $150 to go do your thing. Here's $100 to go do your thing. So, people involve themselves in the ways in which they can do it. For me, I'm just gonna get out there, do the shopping, set it up, feed the people, spend the money, whatever I got to do, and that's okay. But we don't need people. We don't need corporations in Detroit. We need us. We got us, and that's always been a model.
Well, I think everything that you've done since I've known you has been a shit. I'm one of your biggest fans. I appreciate your presence in the city. I appreciate your presence in the poetry community, in the LGBTQ, LMNOP, community.
We taking all the letters.
I was gonna go to the end, but I was like,
look. Sometimes they be like, so what does that be in the meeting? What does this letter mean, Natasha? I'm like, man, I can't even tell you. I looked up the dictionary. I'm like, when did we add that letter, and what does it mean? So
I'm in the community, and I don't keep up with all the letters. I'm just happy that everybody got something that represents them now.
And I'm happy people feel included.
You know what I'm saying?
So I take a couple of those letters and I'll say so I'm out of here. That letter, give me that L. Give me that. Is that no, I don't need that's not mine. Give me that. Give me the A. Was that okay? All right, cool.
It'd be a lot. Oh, is there anything that you would like to talk about real quick that I haven't mentioned?
No, I think we kind of went through everything. I think Butcher and Science Agrees, those have been my two biggest projects for the last few years. I'm excited to promote that. I would just be over explaining and over talking if I had anything else. I've had a very long week, a very long month, a very long 2 months, and now it's coming to an end. And I'm gonna take some time, something that I don't do tonight, and just kind of celebrate a little bit. I barely celebrate anything. I kind of just be like, what's next? What do I need to do is next? What do I need to do is better? And today I'm trying to give myself a breather and say, you wrote a whole book. You've had all of these shows, all of these interviews. You've had, despite the pandemic, you've had a very blessed and amazing year. And you need to sit down and just celebrate you just a little bit. So if I pushed anything else down here, it'd be too much for right now. So whatever's coming next is coming next.
So let everybody know one last time what your social media is on Instagram and on Twitter.
Yeah, I am Natasha T Miller on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or T Miller Poetry. And you'll pretty much anywhere T Miller Poetry is, you'll find me. And if you don't get the book off of any of my sites, buttonpoetry.com, and you'll kind of see me there. And if anybody wants to talk about how we can do some shows in February around the book release, I'm also here. So February 23rd, and we out here.
And she's available to be booked. Damn it.
I am doing Zoom shows, so let's do it.
Oh yeah. You know I'm allergic to face-to-face stuff. I don't know how these poets out here doing like open mics and all that stuff. Shout out to y'all, you know, but not me. No, I'm
98% of my shows have been right here in front of Houston.
I'm at the crib with it.
Okay, y'all being alive with it. I'm good.
Because I'm trying to be here next year.
I agree with you. Stay in the house for your man.
I'm trying to be here next year. So when everybody can book me, I'm available because I'm still here.
Okay, I got checks to get, food to eat, so I'm out.
Well, thank you so much, T. I appreciate you. I finally got your ass at MECCAcon.
Thank you for having me, and you already know how to back channel me and let me know ways in which we can support as well. Support MECCAcon, and y'all keep supporting MECCAcon because it's important, it's big, and it's dope. So
thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. I will be seeing you.